So in this book, even though it's like set in the future, we deal with a lot of like ethical and moral issues, like between like race and like the class system and everything like that. Can anyone tell or like just briefly kind of describe what the difference between ethics and morals is, or does anyone know the difference?
I feel like ethics is more of a societal thing where we all understand that it's wrong for this to happen. Something that even like Audrey and Cinder could agree on that it's wrong. Whereas morals is like a more personal thing that you believe is not okay, and whether or not that's like, it could differ from your neighbor, or it could be the same from your neighbor, but yeah.
I think it also has to do with religion, because I'm just thinking about like classes that you would take at a university, and here at SPU we take UCOR, which is morality, yada yada yada. But like at public universities, they typically take like introduction to ethics or something like that for an equivalent of a gen ed.
Does anybody else have like a different perspective on that? Okay, so we looked it up, and just online, morals are the principles on which one's judgment of right and wrong are based, and ethics are principles of right conduct. So we kind of saw how like these two concepts related, and we determined that ethics determines your morals. I guess from what I've learned, ethics is something that is like kind of solidified and written down, and then based on that you kind of develop your own idea and your own beliefs. So we are going to be, you probably all got the email about the questions we're kind of going to be discussing today. And the first one is...
Yeah, all right. So our first ethical question is it right to sacrifice one person for the sake of many? And then a follow-up question is, what if it was someone close to you? Because that changes things, as we all know. So the example from the book where we got this question from is on page 229. And Prince Guy and Cinder are talking in the elevator. And he whispered, "Imagine there was a cure, but finding it would cost you everything. It would completely ruin your life. What would you do?" His eyes bored into hers, waiting, a tinge desperate. Cinder wet her mouth. "Ruin my life to save a million others? It's not much of a choice." So if you guys can just talk with your neighbors just for a minute, and then we'll gather together, and it'd be awesome to hear from each group.
May I record this group?
I feel like it's just kind of obvious. Well, at least to me it is. You're obviously gonna, I don't know about the term sacrifice, but like if it's one person or like a million, I don't know. That's just me though. And if it was someone close to me, I feel like it'd definitely be harder, but I still do.
I don't know. I think that's a good point. I have a hard time, especially if it was somebody close to me, to say that we would sacrifice somebody. But then when you put it in perspective to a larger group, and I don't know. I guess I don't have a definite answer, but now I'm thinking about it.
I would say I would, but then if it was someone close to me, I think it would be definitely up to
I would hope I would do what Katniss did, where if it was someone else, I'd volunteer myself. It's much better to make the decision for yourself than for, I mean, that's what I would hope I would do.
Yeah, than saying someone else.
Yeah.
Yes.
Especially if they're close. Like,
I would think I would. It's hard, like seeing like someone I love rather than, because I would definitely like.
But just do it quickly.
Yeah, don't think.
Right, no suffering, please. Straight fast into the labyrinth.
Is everyone ready? Yeah? Okay. Yeah. All right, let's start on this side of the room.
Okay. So for the first one, we said it would be right to sacrifice one person for the sake of many. And then for the second part, we said it would be a lot harder to, and it would probably depend on the circumstances, but it would still probably be right what you would have to do.
Okay. Good. The next group?
Well, we say yes for both of the questions because, I mean, Cinder is fiction, but bringing it back, like, isn't that the same thing that Jesus did? And so, if I were in those shoes, I would, yeah.
Awesome. Way to bring it back to Jesus. All right.
I think, at least for me, I think it's just kind of an obvious statement. Like, yeah, I'd rather save a lot of people than one person. Then I keep on, I mean, I'm thinking more into it, but like, who is this people and how many is the many? But overall, I'd say I would. If it was someone close to me, I know it would be hard, but I think I definitely would. Even if it was someone close to me. So.
We kind of talked a lot, like, how they did, about how, like, what closer of a sacrifice is it from a father to son sort of relationship. But then I was also thinking about, like, I was struggling with the idea of, like, if it's a consented sacrifice of that person, isn't that kind of like assisted suicide? So, and so I struggled with that kind of concept because it was like, well, for the most part, society looks down on that sort of thing. So it's like, I don't know, I kind of struggle with it. But if it was like literally for all of humanity, of course that would be something that would be like, okay, maybe, I don't know, but I love you, and like, I don't know, I don't have a definite answer to this. I struggle with it.
Alright, thanks for sharing.
So my first inclination was to say no, just because I think like it's important to save everybody, but at the same time, like, who am I to say that like your life is less valuable, and, like, you should give it up? But then I was also like, well, if it was completely their choice, like if they were like, hey, I volunteer, I'll do this, because like I can see myself doing that, like sacrificing myself. So we were kind of like talking about it like selfless, but also selfish by like, I don't know, like I wouldn't want you to do it, but like I would do it. So like, what if that person is in the same shoes with me? And yeah, so yeah.
No, yeah, I agree with that. I think if it's like one person for all of humanity, but if it was like my brother, like, I don't know if I could do that. I think I'd much rather just take the place. I don't know if I could do that to someone. I don't know.
I also kind of agreed with what they were talking about too. How would you morally decide who would be the person to sacrifice? You know, I just don't see how that would come about. And this kind of would take me back to just the whole Holocaust and how the Jewish people were chosen to be the test subjects in so many awful medical research. And we benefited from that, and so I just kind of wonder, why is it that we use this research so much, and it's okay to use the results of the research, but we look down upon what happened. So I don't know, I would always just kind of have that conflict of, was it really right for them to do that? We see it as wrong, but we still use the research. I don't know. I couldn't really come up with a certain answer.
That brings up a whole new point too. And it's a different perspective. Yeah. Okay, one more person. Over here.
Okay. Well, I was thinking about like along the lines of my family. So my mom has a ton of medical issues, but they always like they have this whole survival plan. Like if we have to get out of America, like what's going to happen? And my mom, like, one of the first things my sister tells me is that we have to go and rob a drugstore and get all the insulin because my mom is diabetic and she can't survive without it. But I can just see my mom, like, if we weren't able to go and do that and we had to go, she'd be like, I'll just stay. And I'm not gonna force her. I'm not gonna like force her to come with us because honestly, like, it would slow the rest of my family down. It would be for the greater good of the rest of my family, and it would be what she would want. So I do, because I would honestly like sacrifice myself for people. It doesn't matter. Not that I think my life is less or I think somebody else is better, but if it's for a greater good and it can like spur along somebody else or other people, it's like everything has a chain reaction. If it was someone close to me, yeah, that's gonna suck. But I think if like the people that I surround myself with, they would definitely be like, go. And if it was in the situation where it would be better for them, then yeah, go for it.
Yeah, just depends on the circumstance. Yeah. All right. Thanks, guys, for sharing.
Thank you guys all for sharing. Just know that this is a very, like, even, it's an ethical issue that's always going to be discussed. Like, there's never going to be a definite answer, so just thank you guys for sharing. So for the next question, so we kind of wanted to talk about how the doctor and everybody kind of keeps secrets from Cinder and kind of keeps her identity from her, even though he kind of knows who she is. And then it's just kind of, I'll just read from page 239 when he kind of tells her who she is. So this is kind of where she's getting mad, and he says, "Calm down, Miss Lynn." And she says, "Why? You can't lie to you can lie to me some more, just like you lie to the prince. If I have lied, it is only to protect you." And then she says, "To protect me from what?" So the question we're going to be asking is, should adults keep secrets from their children regarding their heritage, and what circumstances could justify it? So for this question, just kind of talk amongst yourselves, and then we'll maybe take one or two, so that not everybody needs to share. If you don't, so that you don't feel like you have to.
And I want you to keep this question in your mind as you're reading Jellicoe Road, because that really is the basis of all of the problems in Jellicoe Road too. So think about it.
Yeah, just take a couple minutes, like talk amongst yourselves, and then we'll take maybe one or two responses.
May I record this group as you talk about this?
Yeah, so I said no to the question just because I feel like your heritage is like a huge part of your identity and like who you are as a person, and to know like the history of your family is like super important, at least for me. So like just to be able to know, I feel like is important, no matter how bad the circumstances are. But I'm trying to think like if there are circumstances that could justify it, it is better.
I can think of an example, and it's an example of a real life example of a baby that was born to a mother who killed her previous children, and then she got pregnant again when she was, I don't know, right before she was imprisoned, and her adopted parents told her story, and that just caused her to realize, maybe I'm a bad seed. Would that be good if you had an adopted child to tell them?
But you never know. You never know how somebody will take the news, but I feel like it's worse. You feel more betrayed being like not trusted with that information. Like like if you feel, I feel like I would feel less than if I was kept out of the loop of things that I felt were pertinent to who I am and my identity and how I build my identity. I definitely go with that. And like learning that somebody came from a murderer or somebody came from a like mass murdering family, or depending on who that person is, and also depending on who that community is that kind of shares that information, could really build that person up and give them the tools to deal with that. So
I agree.
I don't think that it's better for a plot line.
anybody have any insight or anything about this question that they would like to share?